to the Bites and Bytes Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen King, and I'm wicked excited about what we're doing this summer. Today, we're kicking off our Seafood Summer Series. And if you think you know where your seafood comes from, the series is definitely going to change your mind. Today, I'm sitting down with James Sibley, who goes by the Fish Fluencer, and that title is well earned. James is an aquaculture educator and content creator who has spent the last 5 years traveling to salmon farms in Scotland, mussel operations in New Zealand, shellfish beds across 4 continents, figuring out how to explain one of the most important and least talked about food systems on the planet to people who have no idea that it actually exists. Aquaculture, for those of you who are new here, is farming the sea, and it isn't directly what you're picturing. Technology running these operations would surprise most people who work in tech for a living, which is exactly why we're here today. What I hope you take away from this conversation is that food on your plate has a story, a supply chain, and a data trail. Understanding that matters whether you're in cybersecurity, food safety, policy, or you just eat fish on a Tuesday. All right, let's jump into it. Well, in Bites and Bytes fashion, we're going to start where we always start. Favorite food and favorite food memory. Go, James.
Oh, that's such a difficult question, right? Because I love everything, with a few exceptions, right? I just came back from New Zealand, where they have some of the only freshwater king salmon farms in the world. And in my head, I was like, salmon in, freshwater, that's going to be, I don't know. I'm used to like American catfish and trout in freshwater. And it's very like, I don't know, flaky and bland in a way. Not in a bad way, that's just how it is. But this was totally something else. It was buttery smooth. They have a hot smoke sort of facility right there in the Southern Alps. And, you sit there overlooking these massive glacial lakes, enjoying some of like the most flavorful freshwater fish you've ever had. That was, I don't know if it was the best fish I've ever had, but I think the whole experience really brought it together. It's hard to recreate at home.
So that almost sounds like favorite memory on top of favorite food in a way. But yes. Can you eat that raw? Is that like a good one raw too? Or is that something you'd always have to cook with freshwater? Is there a difference? I'm just thinking sashimi.
Well, yeah. Oh, I ate my fair share of sashimi out there. I think in one sitting, I did almost 400 grams. I don't know what that is in pounds, but it's too much.
It's a lot. It's a lot of fish. I hope you had some fiber with that.
There was wasabi. I don't know. That counts.
That makes me a little jealous.
Yeah. I mean, especially with the raw seafood across the board, it's a freshness game, right? And the States here, we import almost all of our seafood from international points. So it's hard to get it at the freshness you can hit the country of origin. That's not true across the board, largely, especially if you're just getting sushi at Market Basket. Yeah, that's going to be the case.
James, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of get into like why you were in New Zealand, all these other fun places that you've been to.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm James Sibley. I am what some people call a fish fluencer, an influencer perhaps. I like to think of myself as a sort of a seafood educator in the aquaculture space. So that's farming the seas, the oceans, the waterways, anything underwater or even floating on the water is considered aquaculture, right? So the world produces a little over 200 million tons of seafood every year. And a few years ago, we actually surpassed wild capture with farming and aquaculture. So now aquaculture is the predominant form of seafood production around the world. And this is, aquaculture is not like agriculture in the sense that it's been around for, a millennia, and we have domesticated species that we all know and love, cows, pigs, chickens, etc., that you really can't even find in the wild anymore. Aquaculture is more of a frontier. Even some of the most established farming regions of the world, be it Norway, Canada, China, they've only been doing this at scale for 40, 50 years. And these species are only just under domestication now. And there's hundreds of species. So it's fascinating, right? Everything from seaweeds and algae to a host of shellfish. Most of the shellfish we eat in the US is farm raised, even large fin fish. So the salmon we're all used to, cod, halibut, they're ranching tunas, right? So we're starting to enter an era where we understand our oceans enough. We have the right infrastructure and technologies to support a responsible farming ecosystem on basically the world's largest resource, 71% water. It's a really fun time. And so my role there as a fish fluencer, right, is I communicate this sort of hidden world in the water with the public and the industry alike, right? So it's incredibly global, incredibly fractured industry in that way, right? There's farms in Canada that might be doing things totally different than how they're farming in Norway or Scotland. So I go around as many as I can between species, between operations, and try and break that down into digestible, engaging video content for people to just enjoy in their leisure. It's been a really fun experience, but it's also quite a difficult space to operate in the digital media world. My role here is to try and communicate this sort of hidden world. We're doing 110 120 million tons globally per year of farm seafood. And people don't really know what that means. And they should, because it's really important and interesting.
I echo this because as someone who's trying to advocate for cybersecurity inside of food and agriculture, I feel very alone a lot. There's not a lot of us. And to hear you say that you're in somewhat of a similar situation of education and being an advocate and probably at times an activist in some ways for the industry that you love so much. Yeah, it's sometimes difficult because people definitely look at you and go, what are you talking about? Like, why should I care about this? Or, okay, cool, seafood. I'm sure people just say like, whatever. They glaze over to the fact that all this effort that goes into creating that food or harvesting that food or growing that food, I'm sure it could be quite daunting at times. So thank you for the work that you do, James. I did find you via social media. I think it was LinkedIn and then it was Instagram. And then I saw some of the videos you put out and it was good content because you spoke plainly. It wasn't a lot of tech speak. It wasn't a lot of over the top scientific data. It was just, here's the information, some really cool, great reel running behind it. And then it was easy to understand. And I felt educated. And I don't consider myself a seafood expert. I know enough. I mean, I think from being from New England, I think we have a little bit of a different, subtle, nuanced understanding of seafood. Since it's part of our culture in a lot of ways. But thank you for the work that you do. And I do appreciate it because again, there isn't a lot of information out there. Some of the stuff that's out there is research, of course, and that's great. But it's so interesting to hear that there's so much that's produced in farm now, but yet we don't realize it. And that's, again, I feel like, wow, we've moved so far into our privileged modern lives that we have zero idea where our food comes from, and nor do we care. Yeah, so I wrote down questions because you were talking and I'm like, my brain's firing off and I'm so curious. Let's talk a little bit about the process of agriculture. How did you get there? I know you've been in biology for a long time, but what drew you straight to this? And then what is the most fascinating part of it to you? Like, what do you really like? It keeps, you just go, yes, you just get so excited every time and you think about it or have to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, right, it's sort of like a whole farming ecosystem is a bit removed from urban life, which is where the majority of people find themselves now. Aquaculture is especially prone to this because you need clean, pristine waters away from basically any human development, or at least as much as you can. So by default, aquaculture tends to operate out of sight, out of mind. So it leaves it in kind of this ethereal area where it just happens. And, you know, oysters and salmon, they just show up at the store. But obviously, there's so much more to it.
Yes.
And I did not really know about this sector at all growing up, right? I grew up in a bit of a farm town west of Boston in Massachusetts. And so I was familiar with, you know, sort of small scale farming production. I actually worked the farms in the summers during high school. And then I went off to university in Boston, kind of focusing on microbiology, genetics, and humans, not really having any focus on food production or those systems. But COVID hit. And so like many of us, that was a bit of a reset, right? I had a year off of school because, I mean, Boston shut down. So I wanted to return to my roots in a way. I grew up kind of picking watermelons and staking tomatoes and all that. But COVID hit in the middle of winter, so that wasn't really an option. So I just happenstance chose something similar. Okay, there's a position here at Whole Foods, be a fishmonger on the counter. Why not, right? Sounds kind of similar in a way. It's still food. And the second I hit the counter there, the fishmonger counter, I was totally sort of just enthralled by everything around me, right? There's all this new sort of food around me that I had no idea where it was coming from. And people were asking me at the counter, right? And I was just thrown to the wolves, serve them fish. And I would get questions like, why is that salmon a different color than this? Why am I buying live oysters? That seems weird. I didn't know the answers to any of this. So I started researching it as best I could. And that's when I found this whole world of aquaculture, right? The second you start to look at where your seafood is coming from, you realize that, oh, most of this or a lot of this is being farmed. And what in the world does that mean? How do you farm a shrimp, right? Because in my mind, farming was tomato steaks and, you know, the cattle out back. How you could possibly farm the water in a three-dimensional space, totally beyond me. So as like a biologist in training at the time during university, I really just wanted to figure that out, right? Clearly there was something out there, a big world on the water that I was totally just naive to. And it seemed like most people were too, because I'd get these questions like, why does it say it's farmed? Like, where's the wild salmon? And then as I would look into it, I realized, oh, there's basically no wild salmon left in the Atlantic, at least not commercially. Interesting things like that, right? So I started to make content. This wasn't my initial intention. I thought I would kind of move on from biology in Boston, from the degree into maybe biotech or something in that space. But I just couldn't get away from seafood. And when I started making videos explaining what I was talking to customers every day about, I really kind of found that as like a creative outlet during COVID. And then I built an audience suddenly, right? It started on TikTok, but I moved on to most of the major platforms pretty quickly. And as I was making content, I would notice trends amongst my viewers. Whenever you make any content about food production, there's heated debates sometimes.
Yes. People are very passionate.
Controversial. Yeah, they are. Not a bad thing, right? It just is the lay of the land. Now, when I would get comments and responses on wild capture talk, right? When I was talking about tuna coming into the Boston Harbor, which is a huge industry here, or, dredged clams and scallops and the likes. The sort of backlash that I might get, or the concerns I would hear, made sense to me. It was, stop pillaging the oceans. Like, what are the regulations on this? What's the safety? I get it. What I did not get was when I would talk about aquaculture, the comments I would get were not about emptying the oceans. It was, you're destroying the seabed. This fish is toxic. All these things that just
wow.
There's no basis for that. That sort of, I can understand that we want to protect our oceans from overfishing. I don't understand why farming the ocean is like innately bad. It's not, right? It all comes down to how they do it, where, why, and when, really. So that totally drew me in. Like, how did that disconnect happen, right? It must have happened decades before I came into the scene, because this is ingrained in everyone, not just from, folks who don't eat meat, but anglers, commercial fishermen, policymakers. I really wanted to understand that. Because of the sort of weird and offbeat comments I was getting on aquaculture content, I totally doubled down. That was all I wanted to do. I wanted to figure this stuff out. And as I've pursued that over the years, it's been about 5 years since I started this up, I've ended up all over the world finding out how these aquaculture systems work. Everything from microalgae farms to land-based and offshore salmon farms and shellfish in 4 different continents. I mean, this is a sort of hidden industry that's supporting coastal communities in a way that many thought had to be abandoned, right? I've been to small island communities that would have otherwise been uninhabited had aquaculture not come in and provided a replacement for fishing. And that sort of resonates around the world, but not to the people eating all that seafood, right? It kind of gets lost by that point. You're lucky if you go buy salmon and it even tells you what country it came from, let alone how it was farmed, right? The conditions under which it was raised, by who, right? There's thousands of farming companies out there and nobody has a clue. Some of them are quite large companies, global farming operations, and they operate so far from consumers that they're just out of mind. And so I really want to change that, right? I mean, this could be the future of protein production in a lot of ways, right? There's no reason that we need to stop here. This is just where aquaculture has reached today. The potentials are largely limitless. We've used, at least I just came back from Scotland, right? And the utilization of coastal area, or sort of like the viable coastline for aquaculture, is about 1/1000%. And Scotland has quite a large production. They're the 3rd largest producer of salmon in the world. So we have huge opportunity in front of us. But the industry has not done a good job of telling people what they do and how they do it. And that's causing a lot of problems because they're getting stopped by regulation, by government, by those who live in their communities that don't understand how it works. So it's kind of scary. And that's where I found myself now. Is I started with just an interest in seafood, and just as a biologist, it led me to cultivation. And now I'm trying to bring people on the same journey I went on, really, where it was a journey of discovery. It still is. Every time I visit a farm, there's something different about it. And that's where I am today.
Thank you. That was, I have so many questions now, and I have so many thoughts, which is great because it's exactly what you should be inspiring people to have these kind of thoughts and things like that. What did you find to be the most surprising when you really started going down this rabbit hole, if you will, about something that you were like, wow, I didn't know that. Holy crap.
Yeah, just how well these farmers understand the waters and their crop, their livestock. We have this picture of the ocean as sort of like the Wild West, the last frontier of fishermen heading out with nets and dragging up whatever comes out. That is absolutely not the case, especially in aquaculture, right? Technology has really helped this sector grow because they can have live monitoring of everything from DNA sampling to years and years of water quality and fish health data that's coming into these environmental science hubs dedicated to aquaculture in hotspots around the world. So these companies, or these farmers, they know everything about their waters and their fish, how their fish are doing, how fast they're growing, any sort of health problems they might be having, right? There's no unknown in the grand sense like that. There's still challenges, of course, but it's a really, really controlled environment, much more than I thought it would have been. Because when you look at a farm, for instance, a fish farm is typically a big net hanging in the water. and it's stationary and it's static and there's not much going on. The fish are just feeding. But when you really start to look into it, it's how are they feeding? Oh, they're on they're connected by large tubes to feed centers that are remotely feeding with these AI controlled systems. There's cameras in the pens that give live 4K feeds of the fish, hundreds of thousands of fish. And they're taking these sort of population aggregate measurements about how they're growing, how they're feeding, behaviors, right? These farmers, they know how their fish feel every day. And the same thing goes for all other forms of farming out there in the water. Shellfish and seaweeds are also moving towards this sort of smart farming strategy.
It made me smile when you said that, because of course a farmer would know their livestock, if you will. Of course they would know everything about them and be experts in it. Why wouldn't that translate to fish or any type of seafood in general? Or of course, because that's their profession. And yeah, there's a ton of tech. A lot of people don't realize how much tech is involved in the food industry as a whole, but specifically this, they couldn't probably do what they do without tech, right? Because the monitoring alone, and these are 24/7 operations. I mean, this is a lot of work that goes into these products in general. Quick break. And while you're here, can I ask a favor? If you're enjoying this conversation, please like, comment, and share. It really does help people find the show. All right, a little housekeeping stuff. My book, Securing What Feeds Us, Cybersecurity in Food and Agriculture, is available for pre-order right now and will be published on September 29th, 2026 through Wiley Publishing. If you've been listening to the show for any length of time, you know this book has been something I've been building towards. You can find the pre-order link and all kinds of other information at securingwhatfeedsus.com. Yes, I finally stood the website up. Hooray! I'm really excited. This is where you can go find other reading and recommendations to help as complements to the book. You'll be able to find out where I am, what events I'm going to be at, book signing or otherwise. And also I'm going to put some other fun stuff on there because we do need to continue having a resource of where to find this information. I hope you like it. On the events side, speaking of events, the second annual ICS SCADA Cybersecurity Symposium is meeting June 16th through the 18th in Chicago. If you work at critical infrastructure, this program was most definitely built for you. You can use code LINKD for 15% off registration. I will be there. Please say hi, and I'll be speaking on the first day. And also, speaking of events, you are officially invited to the inaugural Thought Leader Product Safety Innovation Summit on August 14th. It's a virtual event focused on leadership across agriculture, food, pharmaceuticals, and nutraceutical. I'll be there as the closing keynote. You can use Summit 26 at registration. Links to everything will be in the show notes. Now back to the conversation. I have a couple thoughts here around that. Are there fish or other species that they're using that are helping with farming, and not just because I'm just thinking like, I think I saw something about they have different farms that have certain fish that are complementary to whatever fish they're particularly raising or harvesting that can help out with like cleaning or different types of symbiote type relationships. Have you seen any of that yet? Because actually that's new for me because I saw that recently and I was like, wow, is that a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a new frontier, right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
One of the things I love most about aquaculture is it's sort of one big trial. I don't mean that as in like it's a mad scientist in a lab with beakers and everything's fuming. It's, the farmers are iterating every cycle, trying out new technologies, throwing out things that didn't work, like re-examining their challenges. Like if they had one bad year because the water temperatures were warm, okay, good to know. If that's a 5-year trend, that's concerning. What can we do? So I love it because it's always changing like that, right? One of those techniques they've figured out over the years, and this is actually not the most recent development, they've been using what are called cleaner fish for a couple decades now, but only now are they starting to actually farm the cleaner fish too, to bring into the farms to keep it a closed system. Now, cleaner fish are specifically for salmon farms. So salmon have a natural ectoparasite called sea lice. You might have heard of it in the salmon farming world if you're attuned to it, but it's one of the industry's sort of greatest challenges is how to mitigate sea lice because it comes in from wild fish as they swim by or near pens. It jumps off into the farms, and then now you have a parasite that, well, is not a death sentence to the salmon can kind of get out of control if other pieces of the puzzle start to stress the fish out. The waters are too warm, you have a harmful algae bloom. Something like this can bring sea lice levels up to a problematic level. So cleaner fish are one of the many mitigation efforts used in preventing and reducing sea lice numbers. So things like ballan wrasse or lumpfish, these are, since lice are a natural pressure on salmonids in the wild, they are species of fish that co-evolved with the emergence of lice to eat them off.
Lumpfish are so cool.
Yeah.
Lumpfish are so cool. Sorry, I just totally, they're so cool. Please look it up. They're really cool. Sorry.
They are really cool. They're these little blue fish and they have a sucker on the bottom to stick onto the salmon, which is really cool. But these fish will eat lice off of salmon. It's sort of a natural process that just exists in nature. It's a mutualistic relationship. And it's just one of the methods used to fight sea lice. Now, there's no silver bullet in farming. There's no here's the answer to all problems ever. Cleaner fish absolutely help with sea lice. And if you combine that with a bunch of other techniques to help reduce sea lice, things like freshwater treatments, you can really help bring down those numbers in troubling summer months when biology is tough in the ocean, or when the fish may have a stressful event like a transfer, or perhaps there's biotoxins in the water from some other unrelated thing in the world.
That's interesting. Sorry, lumpfish are so cool. Sorry, I'm still on lumpfish.
I love lumps.
I just think it's such a brilliant idea to use other creatures to help. I mean, it just makes sense, on a systems thinking ecosystem level, that just makes sense to me. And the fact that they're doing it and it's really successful shows how well the natural world just kind of works itself out. You mentioned issues. So you mentioned toxins. And what other issues do farmers face in this regard? So I'm assuming weather is obviously an issue. And you said temperature rising in the seas is an issue. What about predators? I'm thinking birds. Probably there's other predators, but are those the type of things that people are dealing with in this regard?
Yeah. So, we have to think that these farmers are operating in basically the open ocean, right? It's an open system and Mother Nature throws at you whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And that can include massive storms, right? You can see swells on some sort of more exposed sites that are up to 10 meters. And over the decades, they've been figuring out how to build the infrastructure to support this. When they first started to bring large farms out to sea, they were wooden, right? And that was great in the sunny, calm summer. And then you would have a hurricane come through and then you didn't have a farm.
Yeah, that would be gone.
So, lessons learned, right? Nowadays, sea pens are largely these fully recyclable HDP rings that are quite large. Some of these are 160, 200 meters in circumference, and they're flexible, so they'll bend and move with the water. And that's just for sea-based systems. There's also land-based systems where, a lot of fish, shellfish and all that, they start in land-based hatcheries. So that faces a whole separate world of, you're basically the world's largest aquariums are aquaculture facilities, right? They're working with millions and millions of live organisms, trying to maintain that sort of live ecosystem. But when it hits the open ocean or open lakes, whatever it might be, that's when they run into natural forces. So predators are absolutely one of the biggest issues. Things like sea lions and seals, wherever they exist, are a huge problem for finfish farmers. So that's any typical fish you might find, because they will jump onto these pens, and some of them can weigh a ton and just collapse in bird nets and end up in the pens. So there's a lot of efforts right now around the world to try and just keep them away, right? You don't want to hurt them. You never want to, in days old, fishermen and the likes, they used to cull seals and sea lions. That does not happen anymore in most places in the world. So it's all about mitigation. How do we keep these predators away from our crop and our livestock? So things like these massive bird nets that come up and over salmon farms are proving to be really effective at the seagulls can't land anymore. So that's that, right? So some of it's an easy fix. Some of it, like seals and in some places sharks, are not easy fixes. And they're actually still trying to develop ways to mitigate these challenges, right? I recently saw a farm in Scotland that is using nets that have sort of a built-in metal lining in the actual weave of the netting around the farm to help keep the seals from biting through it. And it's proving really effective. The seals just give up. A hole in a net is not the end of the world, because they have robots that they send into the nets all the time, look for holes, look for tears, and they can fix them even underwater with the robots. It's pretty cool. But you don't want that to happen in the first place. So yeah, predators and the likes are definitely an ongoing problem. But honestly, warming waters are probably the biggest issue that the global aquaculture sector faces, right? So fish and shellfish are the first sort of farmed species to feel those changes in climate change, because while we just kind of sit out here in the, in the air, you might not notice a 1 degree change on average throughout a year. Fish do in the water. Some places in the world where there's quite large salmon farming operations, they're seeing 3-4 degree increases on average Celsius on average in the summer times. And those sorts of changes really stress fish out. It's too much, right? It's not what nature intended. So they're looking at how they can help the fish stay cooler, whether it be through selective breeding with thermotolerance. So maybe 5 generations from now, in 10, 15 years, those fish will be acclimated to warmer temperatures, or new sort of farming strategies that keep the fish cooler. Maybe we can take these pens, hang them from floats, and submerge them 20 meters underwater. There's colder water down there if you get far enough out in the ocean. So all sorts of strategies like this are actively being tried right now all around the world. But yeah, I would say that the water temperatures is probably the biggest sort of problem of the future. The good thing about it is it's totally something that aquaculture can tackle, right? It's not the first issue to face this sector, and it won't be the last, but it's definitely, in my mind, the most prevalent at the moment. And there's a lot of work, everywhere I go, it's what they're looking at. Thermotolerance in salmon, thermotolerance in oysters and mussels, moving more of their operations on land or further out to sea where they can control what the water temperatures are like better.
It makes a lot of sense considering if you think about cattle, they have the slip gene now so they can stand at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It makes sense that we'd start manipulating our fish stock as well in some ways to be able to tolerate global climate change, because let's be real, it's decimating farming across the world, regardless if it's in the ocean or not. It's got severe issues with a lot of things. And the farmers, all of them, are frontline workers in that regard, and they see it clearly. I'm not surprised to hear that they're working on thermal tolerance at all.
Yeah, and a lot of people with regards to the ocean, right? It's what's kind of cool about aquaculture, especially with net pen farming, is they're technically mobile, right? There's no reason that a farm couldn't just be picked up and moved. And actually, they do that all over the world for transferring and harvest. They will literally unmoor a pen, get a tugboat, and tow 100,000 fish to somewhere else for harvesting or transfers, whatever it might be. So it's actually, unlike any other kind of farming system, you can just pick it up and go somewhere else, in theory. In practice, it's much more difficult than that, right? If we're farming on the top of Scotland and the water's getting warmer, where do we go? The open ocean. So that presents a whole new world of changes.
Yeah.
Same thing in the south and the southern hemisphere, right? We're farming the bottom of New Zealand, the bottom of Australia. Where do you go from there? Antarctica, right? That presents some new challenges. So moving farms around can be pretty complex in that way. And it's also, this is a huge problem in aquaculture, and I'm sure it is in the rest of agriculture, is regulation and policy, right? So just because you can do something and the biology might check out and the science supports it, doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. It's such a big problem that, for instance, there was a large company that wanted to start up a $500 million project in Maine. It would be a massive development in Maine to do land-based salmon farming. It's a new technology that they're trying out. Incredibly expensive, but a lot of promise. They were trying to do this for over a decade. They got caught up in the courts, and eventually they said, this isn't worth it. We're selling the land and we're going to Norway to build there, and then we'll sell the fish back to the US. And it's something I'm seeing all over the US right now, and Canada even now. And it hurts me, right? Because I'm an American. I don't want to have to get on planes and go everywhere else to go show off the farms of the world. We have a lot of great waters here in the States, and they're just incredibly underutilized.
That's so sad, because Maine, when people think Maine, the immediate picture in their head should be a Red Lobster, right? So it is a seafood hub. However, the fun fact, actually, blueberries are very popular in Maine. Please don't discount the blueberries. They're really good too. But I'm sure there's a bunch of influencers that are out there as well, and some really great, amazing fishermen in that space with lobsters, and educating people on how lobsters are taken as well and what is not taken and the regulations around that. Obviously, can't take a pregnant lobster. They try not to take the females really at all. There's a lot of them will pick them up and clean them off if there's a barnacle issue or whatever else is going on. There's a lot of care and love that goes into that industry. And I'm hopeful that that other industries will also sort of pick that up because it's a stewardship, right? You're really a steward of what you're doing in your environment. And it got me thinking about how really, in a way, this is also helping with sustainability. It's regenerative ag and it's finest, if you will, but it's also helping with sustainability because you can keep fish stocks and species alive. We're not going to necessarily lose them like we have in the wild. Cod has obviously been a very hot topic in a lot of places because it's gone in some places. And do the farmers realize that that's part of their job too, in a way, is that there are stewards of a particular species that they are farming so people can enjoy generations to come? Is that something you noticed on your travels?
100%. It is that before they are farmers, right? They are watermen and women.
Yes.
They live in the areas, they fish the areas, they're raising kids there. That's what matters, is that they maintain or improve the sort of ecosystem in which they operate in. Now, that's actually not too difficult for like shellfish operations, right? So oyster farms, mussel farms, even scallop farms, those exist. Those are filter feeders. There's no input, and they actually clean the water, and they operate as artificial reefs. So a lot of long-standing mussel and oyster farms that have been there for decades, let's say, have flourishing marine ecosystems because they're protected, right? You don't have boats going over them. You don't have recreational and commercial fishermen coming through. They're sort of cordoned off farming areas that they're just full of life. So that's, mussel farmers always think of themselves as benefiting the ecosystems in which they operate in. And they totally do. It gets a little more complex when you move into things like fish, right? Fish require an input. You have to feed them. So you have to consider where that feed is coming from. You also have to consider the output, right? The waste. So that's not to say that shellfish don't have waste output. They do. It's just viewed differently by regulators and by the ecosystem itself. It can be more, the organic matter coming out of fish can be more intense on the ecosystem. So a lot of sort of funding and money in the industry in the last 10 years, I would say, has gone into benthic monitoring and reduction of organic loading on the environment. This really means, how can we feed more efficiently, waste less food? And fish have to poop, that's life. But how can we ensure that the area in which that's happening is minimally impacted, right?
Hi, we're Anns and Sage. And if you're in food production, agriculture, and even running a zoo or an aquarium, we need to talk. Because let's be honest, your operation relies on a lot more technology than most people realize. Rain dryers, hatchery controls, life support systems for animal habitats, all connected, all critical, all often overlooked when it comes to cybersecurity. That's where we come in. At Anns and Sage, we help industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks. Without the fear tactics, the fluff, or the 200-page audit you'll never read. Whether you're producing milk, processing seafood, or running life support systems, we focus on what matters, keeping your operations safe, your people protected, and your business running, even when things go sideways. And hey, we know not everyone on your team speaks cyber. And because not everyone on your team speaks cyber, we've created a free resource library at annsandsage.com. Inside, you'll find sector-specific infographics built for teams in agriculture, seafood, zoos, and aquariums. They're clear, practical, a little witty, and designed to help frontline teams understand the risks without needing a translator. No logins, no email required, no catch, just usable tools that make cybersecurity stick. If you're responsible for keeping food moving, animals safe, and systems online, Anns and Sage is your partner in real-world resilience. Visit annsandsage.com to download your free infographics, book a consult, or just learn more about how we're helping critical infrastructures secure what matters most. Anns and Sage, helping the industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks.
I was recently at a salmon farm in Scotland. It had been there almost 50 years, and it was an old site, so it came to existence before they really knew about these things. Like, we should be operating in much more exposed areas with much stronger water flow. So the site was kind of grandfathered for a while. They decided, you know what, we're going to put it somewhere else. We're going to put it in higher water currents, better monitoring, etc. So they actually picked it up, they moved it once they got all the licensing to do that. And then they decided to monitor the seabed after the fact, right? Great opportunity. Very rare to find something like this, a case study where you can just see what the environment, what the seabed does after, intensive salmon farming leaves. And what they discovered was there's a bit of like an ellipses around where the farm is, where you see more organic loading. It doesn't mean like the seabed is suffocated and we're sitting in like layers and layers of feces. It's not the case, right? What we're talking is a change in the environment, right? So you see more macrobenthos that are kind of brought in by the nutrients, and they can compare that with with let's say 2 miles up the loch to look at what they assume nature is. I mean, it's hard to know in Scotland. People have been there a long time, but just comparing with what hasn't been farmed. And what they found is that after 1 year, that ellipses had shrunk. That zone of detectable impact had shrunk by over 50%. And then after just under 3 years, it was 34 months, it was completely gone. There was no detected impact on the environment after that point. So it was really exciting for the industry because nobody had any idea going before this in Scotland of how long that impact would last. And for it to be such a short time frame, seabeds are alive. It's not just like mud. Even if it looks like mud, it's like soil. It's living. So it recovers incredibly fast under a farm. Can't really be said about a lot of other kinds of farming there. And that kind of focus on how the seabeds are impacted is one of the key sort of debates today. I spend a lot of time in Scotland, so that's where I know this debate is happening, but I know it's happening elsewhere around the world. There is always an impact. It's just about how do we minimize it, right? Let's put a farm somewhere where there's not a reef below us. There's not endangered seagrass beds. Put the farm just over some mud in high current areas and then monitor the heck out of it, right? Live data every day for years and years and years, the entire time the farm's operating. And then practices like fallowing, right? Same as land. You give the seabed time to rest. So you harvest your fish out, you wait 6 to 9 months, put them back in, and the seabed, if you do that regularly, your impact is incredibly shrunken.
Makes total sense. And along the same lines of this sustainability conversation we're having, you made me think about food security and how you mentioned it kind of already a little bit, so I'm just going to poke at it. The coastal communities, a lot of them have lost their fishing ability because of overfishing in the ocean. And people don't realize actually that seafood in general is a very large protein around the world. It's not just a thing you enjoy because you had a special occasion, or it's actually people's primary protein. This is what they eat. Do you think that this type of farming can be replicated in certain places that have lost this, whether, like you said, the island nations or any other coastal areas where it's been overfished? Do you think this is something that can be the future for food security in different countries around the world?
Absolutely. And everywhere I go, that's what the farmers think. A lot of them are ex-fishermen, or they're from 10-generation fishing families. Already in Southeast Asia and even up through Korea and China, aquaculture is everywhere. China, it's alone, does over 50% of global aquaculture. They have taken this in stride. They have a lot of people to feed. So in the last 2 decades, they've really ramped up their production in a lot of really creative ways too. So it doesn't have to be just, I want to have a farm. Here's an acre of water and let me go put out some mussel lines and see what happens, right? It can be much more coordinated than that. For instance, in Maine, I was out with a lobsterman in the Damariscotta River Basin area. And because his season is getting shorter and shorter every year, he's not catching what he needs to. A local kelp farming company offered to give him lines to put out and harvest on a co-op program as well. So he's supplementing his dwindling lobstering season with kelp. And it's a really popular strategy that's taking off at a lot of lobstermen in Maine at the moment. It is. Yeah, it's great.
Brilliant.
It's stability, right? It's stability for the waterways. And kelp the lobster boats are already equipped with everything they need to farm kelp. You need a big crane and you need some knives and some guys on board. And that's that.
Yeah. Kelp is perfect for Maine. I could see that completely be taking off.
Absolutely. No, it's been going on for years now, and they're really hoping to scale this up as far as they can. Kelp is of huge interest globally. It's still a bit of a difficult species to farm because the finances don't make total sense at the moment, but they're working on ways to make kelp at least profitable, right? Or something that people could eat. Right now, a lot of it ends up in fertilizers, which is great. It's a great source for natural fertilizers, but it's also not expensive by the ton. So from a farming standpoint, you either need to farm a heck of a lot more on the same boat, or you need to get the price up at the end consumer.
Love the creative ways to work with the environment around us. So that fills my heart up. I love to hear that kind of stuff. Let's quickly switch into tech, because you've talked a little bit about it over the place. And obviously, since I am a tech cybersecurity podcast, I want to make sure I definitely jump into this or dive in, since we should start using more puns. So I would love to talk about the different IoT devices, so the internet connected devices that are in this particular farming. I'm assuming there's drones being used in various ways. So I'm interested to hear about that. And we can talk a little bit more about these robots, because the idea of a robot fixing a hole in a fishing net is kind of epic. And also, I'm assuming they have divers. So there's got to be some interesting diving tech that has to go into this, especially since some of the water could be really super cold. And I'd love to hear about how they're dealing with that. So go for it, all things tech.
All things tech, yeah. So some of the largest companies in aquaculture have put out plans. We are a smart farming company. It's one of those like 90-degree right angle turns. This is what we're going to do. And that's for a bunch of reasons, right? So the only way to sort of scale what we do on the water is to be able to get one person to be more and more productive with how they can farm. They've reached points in Norway where like 3 or 4 people can effectively manage and monitor 4,000 tons of salmon at a time. Norway does about 1.5 million tons of fish every year. Of salmon every year. They only have 5 million people in the country. So salmon is actually their number 2 export behind oil. They are a tech-heavy country, and Norway is sort of the epicenter of tech in aquaculture. So whatever they're doing with their salmon farming seems to trickle out into the world in different ways. You can't just take what Norway's doing, which might be autonomous feeding or submersible pens on these large winches out in deep waters. You can't just apply that elsewhere in the world. It doesn't work, right? But you can adapt it to fit the scenario you're in. In terms of like the actual tech I'm seeing right now, automated feeding, centralized feeding is a huge one, right? So traditionally on most fish farms, you have to send out a ton of people every day with bags of feed over their shoulder and a scoop. And they do that. Yeah, they scoop all day. It's incredibly labor intensive, and it's a hard job. Same thing is true for the likes of oysters, right? Oysters have to sort of be flipped in and out of the water. They're an intertidal species. So traditionally that's done by hand. You have guys that go out there and flip oyster bags for weeks on end, and then they turn around and they flip them back the other way.
Wow.
So we're seeing a lot of like large infrastructure, large tech coming in that's helping with some of these really arduous processes, like autonomous feeding, right? You put a floating spinner connected to a large barge that's hooked up to the internet, usually through satellites, because these barges are way out at sea. And then you have somebody on the mainland who has a big, one of those like hacker man screen setups in front of them with all the cameras on the fish. They can see the pellets coming down, and they're starting to implement systems that it's pellet detection, it's fish behavior detection. So are these fish satiated? Should we stop feeding, right? If they're not satiated, how quickly are we feeding? All of these pieces come into play when it comes to feeding your fish. Feeding the fish is the most expensive part of all fish farming. It's usually well over 50% of the cost. So it's really important that they get it right. So a lot of tech is going into feeding there, but a lot of tech is also going into maintaining the structural stability of these pens. They need to be flexible out at sea, and you have cameras out there all the time. A lot of this stuff can be up to 30, 40, 50 meters deep in the water column. So these are, for instance, Scotland is not known for having clear waters. They're nutrient rich and they're great for fish. But visibility, you can't see the seabed anywhere unless you're like in 1 meter of water. That's just how it is. So you need these sorts of cameras and robots in the water. The most common utilization of robots, everybody's doing this right now, is net cleaning. So you have these robots the size of like a person, probably some of them are like a Mini Cooper. Wow. And they have treads on them. They're kind of like tank treads, and they run around the inside of the pen controlled by a boat. They're hooked up on wires, and they have large brushes that sort of, it's called defouling, or just removing all the growth on the nets to keep the water flow coming in. And this needs to be done in the summer, sometimes like once every 10 days on every pen. Scotland, for instance, has over 1,800 individual pens, and they all need to be cleaned every 2 weeks. So it's a big process. It's an expensive process. So the robots are really helping with that. And, sending divers down is something a lot of farms still do. They want to move away from it in a lot of places. It's expensive. And it can be dangerous, right? So if you can send a robot down, we call them, the ROVs in the sector here, to do whatever you need to for you, fixing nets, net inspections, picking up things with robot arms. They're starting to move toward that.
Makes sense. Totally. Whatever you can do. A lot of people don't realize that tech is created specifically actually in the food and ag sector for human safety. So think about cutting lines for chicken, things like that, or any cutting line for any type of protein. They actually the robots are for safety purposes. But the problem is they're not as fast as humans. Humans still cut faster, which is kind of wild to think about.
Wow. But
yeah, so most tech is brought into the industry because of safety. And I think that's a kind of an honorable way to bring in tech, not just because it's going to make us whatever. I think that's the fact that they're thinking about safety first is super important.
It alters our operations fundamentally, right? A lot of farms salmon farms, for instance, that operate very, very far away from any civilization, they need live out crews. And that's not only is that expensive, but you're asking a lot of people to live out on a farm 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. some sort of system like that. So by being able to put these systems on more and more sort of remotely controlled systems, some of these sites are able to move off of a live-out system, which makes it much more viable as a sort of farming strategy.
That
is especially true in Canada.
I would think that, that would be a really tough life at times, depending on the weather and what was going on in the world, or that could be a lot. If they can move away from that, that would be really interesting. Fully autonomous fish farm. I'm sure we're not actually not that far away from it.
It would never be, you can never just leave it. After all, it's farming. But if you can monitor it 24/7 in other ways than literally standing on the pen, and they should, especially with fish, right? It's difficult to know what's going on in a pen just by looking at it. You can have 100,000 salmon in one pen and you only see 50 swimming around the surface, because some of these nets can be 30, 40,000 cubic meters, right? And they can go down at least 30 meters. So understanding your population can only be done with technology.
Just love what we're doing with tech in general. But of course, the cybersecurity expert in me goes, well, crap, what are we doing to secure that? Because that's all open. And we're probably using default passwords. And who's updating that firmware? And how are we controlling this? And is there security awareness? And what are people actually doing? Are we sharing our logins? And I'm sure I just said everything that actually is happening. And I worry because I think that a lot of regulations and policies, you've already mentioned this, James, are going to happen in isolation on land and not be functional on water. And I hope that the right people get in the room when that time comes. They can have a serious conversation about the lifestyle and the human aspects around any type of farming to make sure it doesn't cause cumbersome actions that could impact safety or the quality of the food. And that is always my concern when I'm talking to policy and regulators is, hey, we need to not do this in isolation. You need to talk to people that are actually doing it, because otherwise they're going to find workarounds and it's still going to be unsecure anyways. That is my point there.
No, I mean, it's absolutely true. And just the adoption of tech on like ocean farms it's difficult. Not only are a lot of farmers sort of, they have something that works, and it can be difficult to bring them on board with expensive technological trials. But a lot of times they don't work, right? So you have, there's this thing in the aquaculture space of like Silicon Valley, like, oh, here's a fancy light, put this in your pen. And they put it in their pen and it immediately breaks and shatters and the storms rip it away. And that's that. So it's that sort of mentality, right? Of these things need to be able to, stand 100-mile-an-hour winds, 10-meter swells, any sort of biofouling. Like there's regularly boats going out to these pens that are 50, 100 meters long. Serious, massive vessels. Everything needs to be built to withstand basically the toughest environments on Earth. And a lot of times it doesn't start that way. The most successful tech I'm seeing on sites now is, it could survive a nuclear winter. And that's what you need. Fish thrive in that kind of environment. They love rich, cold waters. And you only find those in pretty tough places.
Yeah, isolated, remote places. The problem with a lot of the tech that's out there is people run before they walk or crawl in this regard. And I think that a lot more research needs to be spent before we just toss solutions at things. Because again, in the back of my mind is it's insecure. Who's going to say like a pirate isn't going to roll up and try to hack your system and steal your stuff? Like that could happen. There's probably plenty of data that people don't want to share. I mean, you don't necessarily want to know what your stock count is or any type of data that's just going to make you a target. I'm sure you want to lock down. So to me, as much as tech is great, we should crawl a little bit before we're running straight at it. And again, this is the reality of it because we're not considering the people that are actually using it and how they're going to use it and how it's going to either help or hurt or make it ridiculous for them. Like there's a lot of factors in here that I consider when I talk about it.
You know that nagging feeling? That one that says your operations might be more exposed than you realize, but a full-blown assessment feels out of reach? Traditional OT cyber physical assessments are expensive, time-consuming, and let's be honest, you get a point-in-time report that's outdated the moment something changes. That's not risk management, that's just a snapshot. That's exactly why we built Anzen OT, designed by practitioners who've been in your shoes. It's one of the first subscription-based platforms for continuous quantified OT cybersecurity risk management. Not just monitoring or threat detection, but actual risk modeling built for your facilities. Whether you're managing a processing plant, a distribution center, a zoo, or even a utility, Anzen OT gives you a living picture of your operational risk posture that evolves as your facility does and turns that intelligence into actionable, prioritized tasks so you know exactly what to fix first. Subscription plans start at prices that might actually surprise you in a good way. Visit anzanot.com to explore plans and see how continuous facility-focused risk management finally fits your reality. Anzan OT, risk intelligence that evolves as fast as your operations do.
So I eat a lot of salmon just because I spend a lot of time around salmon farms. Salmon only makes up, it's not a huge chunk of the world's seafood production. It's only about 3 million tons around the world. 3 million tons is a lot of fish, right? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but that's surprising that it's not a top fish, like to me. I don't know, but maybe I'm just, an average consumer in this regard.
Yeah, well, Asia takes the cake with it, and they don't do a lot of salmon. So the species that are popular there, Pangasius, tilapia, those tend to reign supreme. Salmon's definitely a top 5 in terms of how they're farmed. But right, we're talking 200 plus million tons a year of total production, only 3 million is salmon. I eat a lot of salmon, especially if you get really into the salmon world, the farm salmon world, there's all sorts of different things to look out for.
Really?
Like interesting things for like eating it, right? Was this raised entirely on land? Was it raised in fresh water, right? That was an interesting one. There's different species of salmon being farmed around the world that taste totally different. And how they're farmed in like what kinds of waters, what they're fed, totally changes like the texture of the meat and like how it cooks, all of that. So I'm a huge fan of king salmon. I was eating a lot of that in New Zealand. It's all they farm there, actually. They're king salmon only country. And man, that's a buttery fish, right? You don't even need, anything in the pan. It just melts. It's fantastic.
It's funny because it's almost, the way you're describing it, James, it's almost like you're a wine snob of like salmon in a way. Because you really, the way you describe it is, you hear the excitement when people talk about wine. Like I happen to be a wine lover, so I really appreciate this conversation. But now I'm like, oh, you can be a salmon snob? Excellent. Like this is a new thing.
Yeah. Well, it's for everything you can farm out there, right? Because the second you can control the environment, you can't control the environment. The second you can control some parameters, you can make all sorts of like interesting adjustments and make like a unique product. Another really cool one I had recently was green shell mussels. I'm a sucker for those. They're like twice the size of the blue mussels we're used to, and they are just delicious. They are so much better. You can only farm them in the Pacifics. No shade on us in New England, but
that's okay.
Yeah, they're huge mussels that they have a lot more omega-3s in them, just by virtue of how our biochemical processes involved. So they're really fatty, and you feel it when you cook it. They don't shrink up into nothing. They're these huge, you have to like mussels in order to like green shell mussels, but definitely want to try if you're a mussel fanatic.
Yeah, I do love mussels. I have to say, I'm definitely one of those people that orders them when I see them. It's interesting that you're talking about Southeast Asia because I've spent a lot of time there in my travels around the world doing various risk assessments in different places. And the seafood game is so different there. It is totally different in so many ways than North America in general. And I remember I was at an open market in Thailand when it's very trendy. You've seen it on social media, I'm sure. It's one of the floating markets. And I remember I got some pineapple and then we got a prawn, and the prawn was like the size of a brick. It was so big.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking this, and had like, it looked like a fighting prawn, like it would kill you in the wild kind of thing if it saw you. And I just remember I couldn't even I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to touch this. I know it's dead, but like, I don't know if I want to mess with this. That thing was so delicious. It was crazy good. They're sweet. We also went to a fishing village in Malaysia. We were in Penang. We're on the island side, not the mainland. And I remember they just pulled that fish straight out of the water right then. And that whole ecosystem was coming back because they had otters. They were coming back through. Very exciting moment seeing wild otters. And it was so interesting because I remember thinking, I'm never going to have fish this fresh, probably for a long time, if ever again. I mean, yes, the eyeballs were there, and yes, you were picking the bones and all these things, but it was so well done and it was so authentic that it stayed with me. It's created quite the memory. I mean, food is always a memory, as we've always said on this show. But yeah, you're making me think about all the fish dishes I've had in my lifetime. And and then Japan. I've been to Japan so many times, and that's an entirely different seafood culture as well. I'm not a huge fan of uni, probably because I haven't had it really good yet. No, I think I had it.
They're starting to ranch them on the West Coast.
I'm not surprised, to be honest.
It's such a shame with, like, a lot of people have an aversion to seafood. They had a bad experience. They might think they're allergic, this, that, and the other. A lot of it comes down to mishandling, right? So, and it's such a shame because farming seafood takes a while. It takes 3 years to bring a salmon up to like 5 kilos.
Wow.
So all that time, all that money goes into it. And then it wasn't kept at temp for 12 hours by a secondary processor somewhere down the road that they no control over. So you have the first 3 years, that's all the farmers. And then the next 48 hours, it's, man, I hope they do it right. And that's kind of just left to the markets. That's where most issues with seafood come around, right? Farm seafood it's hard to get sick from just by the nature of its control. But whatever happens in the middle, the processing, secondary processing, value adding, shipping around the world,
Cooking.
things can happen. Yeah. That's primary reason why people get like sick or, something went wrong.
And it's so funny because as of recording, there's a bad listeria outbreak happening in the United States right now. And people want to point fingers at the farmers. And you're right. What about all the secondary processes in between? And it's crazy. And the traceability laws that are happening or going to happen we'll be able to pull down data down to like the actual seed, which is fine. Like, great. We can trace exactly which farm it came from. But that doesn't really necessarily mean it was the farmer's fault. That it could have been a trailer that wasn't cleaned properly. It could have been handling in a grocery store or handling in distribution in general. And you're so right. And I think we need to talk about that more. I think we need to have that conversation of, you just had one bad experience with it, but it may not have been the full experience. I've had scallops forever. I mean, it's a huge staple as a kid. I still love them. In fact, I actively crave deep fried scallops and shoestring onion rings and shoestring fries from New England, like with tartar sauce and all the things. But every time I think about that, because I've only had scallops cooked, but when I went to Japan for the first time, I had them raw. Amazing. Yeah. Totally changes how you think about scallops after that. They're sweet and they're buttery and it's so different and so epic. We're going to sign off in a sec. There are people out there that are trying, I think, in their own ways and just excited about seafood. So your message is definitely resonating with people, whether it's indirectly or directly. And thank you for what you do, James, because I think that we need this right now, especially since we're losing that educational piece with our giant environmentalist type people that are aging out or passing. And we need, more David Attenboroughs and Jane Goodalls and all those people to just be excited about the world around them. And also, help promote that this is okay and that we could do this. And also we need to secure this damn tech because now I'm nervous more than I was before we started.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. My one message to the world is we need more people doing what I do. Let's get the farmers online talking about what they do, the experts, people, institutions, because there's whole sectors of the world, regions of the world that are dedicated to aquaculture, but they're sort of in a little bubble. In like Norway, it's popular to study. You can get an undergraduate degree in aquaculture. That's just a thing. And it's just kind of known. And if I had known, I would have done it. The more information we can get out there from those who work in the sector, or if you're adjacent, right? I didn't start in this, but here I am now. So just getting that stuff out there, showing people how cool it is. And I think that, if we can get that feeling of it's the same as like a backyard garden, it's that innate, right? It just makes sense.
Yeah.
We're like sheep in a field. It just feels right. I want us to get there. It's a long road ahead, but I'm confident.
Definitely going to be the future. It is the future. It's now and it is the future. So thank you again for sharing your expertise. This has been super fun for me. So I'm so nerded out on so many levels. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, have a good day.
That's a wrap on today's episode. I'd like to thank James for taking the time out to come onto the show and share all the fun facts and wisdom. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you learned as much as I did. If you're listening and you feel a little differently about seafood, good. That's the whole point. Aquaculture is feeding the world in ways most of us never think about, and the technology driving it is advancing faster than most people realize, including those who are supposed to be securing it. The Seafood Summer Series continues on next episode on the Bites and Bytes Podcast, so make sure you tune in. In the meantime, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.